Did you know that the episode you are about to listen to is available on YouTube as a full multi-camera experience? Search for the Murder Police Podcast channel on YouTube. Subscribe and see what you have been missing.
Three Things, a Murder Police Podcast production.
What they did find is that he had this factory, like an old abandoned factory. And I guess upon examination of that, they had found hard drives and USB sticks that had some pretty disturbing material and images on it. And that there was some writing suggested that he was involved in Madeleine's disappearance. Now, also even more disturbing was at this abandoned factory, there was like a plethora of children's clothing, swimsuits, like over 75 swimsuits of children's. Welcome to the Murder Police Podcast. Three Things, Madeleine McCann.
Warning. The podcast you're about to listen to may contain graphic descriptions of violent assaults, murder, and adult language. Listener discretion is advised.
Welcome to the Murder Police Podcast. Three Things, Madeleine McCann. Welcome to the Murder Police Podcast as we discuss once again a new topic that we've entered into, talking about three things of particular cases. And this time I wanted to talk about Madeleine McCann. So David, how are you?
Doing good. I like doing these. They're kind of fun. They're fun to, I don't think we've researched as much when we have to do these to dig deep and get them put together. And it looks like people, it's fun. The best part is when people actually go and they share their thoughts on this. That's the biggest thing. And so as we go through, these are kind of, they're halfway opinions. They're halfway addressing questions that are out in the ether.
I think they're just our three things.
That's it. Exactly. So don't hesitate on YouTube or one of the social media platforms to go ahead and jump in. And what do you think? Are we wrong?
What are your
right?
three things?
That's it. Yeah. What are your three things? Because I think it's a great way to have a good discussion on that. So that's what we're going to do today is Madeleine McCann.
Yeah. And, a lot of people may not know about this. This was a case from back in 2007, May 3rd. And it's the missing case of a little 3-year-old girl out of Portugal whose family was on a vacation or holiday, as they call it. So why don't you summarize the case a little more for us?
Sounds good. Here's what this case looks like. Okay, I'm going to lay this out more like in a time frame since it's been so many years since this happened. So let's go all the way back to 2007. On May 3rd, and we're going to go to a place called Praia da Luz, Portugal, at a resort called the Ocean Club Resort, and this is where we stage up. At that time, on May 3rd, 2007, Madeleine McCann, she was 3, vanishes from her bed in the McCann family's holiday apartment at the Ocean Club Resort while her parents dine at the tapas restaurant about 160 feet away. Kate and Gerry McCann had left Madeleine and her twin siblings sleeping, and the parents would check in and look in on the kids at intervals. At one point, Kate discovered Madeleine was missing at around 10 p.m. Following that, the Portuguese police launched an investigation, and border alerts are issued. The apartment's cordoned off, but early handling of the scene is later criticized for procedural flaws. We see that a lot in a lot of cases. Continuing on in mid-May, Madeleine's case gets massive media coverage. British police and experts, including sniffer dogs and forensic teams, assist in the search. Keep going into the summer. By July 2007, a British sniffer dog trained to detect human blood and cadavers reacted to the McCann's rental car and the apartment. This leads to a shift in the investigation's focus, where they move from an abductor to possibly the parents being involved in her disappearance. On September 2007, Kate and Gerry McCann are actually declared formal suspects by Portuguese police. The theory is Madeleine died accidentally and the parents covered it up. Move on to September 9th, just a couple days later, and the McCanns return to the UK still under suspicion by the Portugal police and, frankly, by now, a lot of the people in the public that have seen this in the media. October 2007, a high-profile battle begins as the McCanns sue multiple newspapers over defamation and false reporting. It looks like the tabloids got hold of this like they usually do, maybe. Now, jumping into the next year, on July 28, 2008, the Portuguese authorities actually put the case on hold and lift the suspect status on the McCanns due to a lack of evidence. During 2009 and 2010, the McCanns actually hit the road on a public and legal advocacy tour to keep the case alive. They hire private investigators, and a new sketch of the potential suspect is released. Let's move on now to 2011. In May of 2011, Scotland Yard launches Operation Grange, a UK-based review of the case at Prime Minister David Cameron's request. Into 2013, Operation Grange identifies 38 persons of interest. Police announce Madeleine may have been abducted during a burglary gone wrong. That's a wide net that they developed through that investigation. Moving into 2014, in June of 2014, United Kingdom and Portuguese police conduct a series of digs in Praia da Luz. No evidence is found. In 2017, on the 10-year anniversary, May 3, 2017, investigators say they are pursuing a critical lead, and Madeleine's parents reaffirm their belief that she is alive. On June 3, 2020, German prosecutors identify Christian Bruckner, a convicted rapist and child sex offender, as a new suspect. He was living near Praia da Luz in 2007 and had a history of burglary and sex crimes. In June 2020, German police say they have evidence Madeleine is dead, but do not release it publicly. They open a murder investigation. That's very unique that this crosses international jurisdictional lines so many times. In late 2020 into 2021, German investigators find hundreds of child abuse images and disturbing writings linked to Bruckner. He denies involvement in Madeleine's case. In April 2022, Portuguese authorities formally declare Bruckner an official suspect to prevent the statute of limitations from expiring. In 2023, more evidence surfaces, including disturbing alleged notes and potential cell phone data, but no conclusive proof yet. Getting closer to where we are today, in early 2024, prosecutors revealed that Bruckner is under investigation for multiple sexual offenses, but still no charges in the McCann case. In May 2025, as of this month, reports suggest German authorities are under pressure to formally charge Bruckner before his release from prison in September 2025 for unrelated crimes. They cite new leads and possible confessions, but legal hurdles remain. So where we're at today is Madeleine still missing, Christian Bruckner remains the prime suspect, and the case is still open and active in Germany, Portugal, and the United Kingdom.
Well, for people who didn't know or doesn't know anything about this case, that's very helpful, so thank you.
Good deal. It was helpful for me. I have to go back like you do and research these. We hear about them while we're going through them over the years in the news, but there was a lot I learned just in that little bit. So without further to do, as Jasper used to say.
Further to do.
Exactly. Go ahead and what are your three things? You go first.
Well, as soon as I heard about this case back in 2007, the first question that burned in my mind, and still 18 years later burns in my mind. I mean, you know, I have a passion for children. I work with children for a living and had for years. But my first thought was, and I'm by no means trying to be ugly toward the parents, but who goes to dinner and leaves 3 children unattended?
Yeah.
I mean, this resort, from what I could tell from looking at the pictures of it when this was being covered by the news, it was a fairly nice resort. It wasn't just a run-of-the-mill, 2-star resort. It looked very nice. I've never been to it, but it looked nice. The resort did, Ocean Club it was called, they did have a nanny service or like a babysitting service. And from what I recall, the McCanns, I think, had utilized that a couple of times. So my question was always, why did you not utilize the service? Who chooses to put 18-month-old twins and a 3-year-old toddler to bed and leave and go to dinner? And the resort, or I'm sorry, the restaurant they went to is a tapas restaurant. It was roughly 50 meters away.
Right.
You're not just sitting out back on the patio and the kids are in there sleeping. You're walking a good distance to go to dinner.
That's a common theme, and I think that we can ask that question without going into the world of victim blaming because and that's because it's shared by most parents. So it's not quite victim blaming, but we got to admit too that unfortunately, when we have any kind of tragic event, as there are factors that contribute to the risk that are displayed there. So and you know what? And it's also not unnatural to compare things that go on around us with the way we would behave or look at it. So you're not the only one. I think probably millions of people, the first thing they thought is like, again, why were you so far away? And and I guess there's some avenue of diligence in making regular checks. I get that and everything. Maybe maybe a little bit of being naive about the environment and forgetting where we're at. We always talk about how maybe many, many years ago, people would talk about unlocked doors and windows in our homes, and now you've got triple deadbolts and things like that, and alarm systems,
and cameras all over the house.
Yeah. So but that's a natural thing that people ask. I asked it too. Because I have a daughter, you have a son, and the idea that we do that. So I will get ahead of that right now. I don't think it's victim blaming. It's a risk factor. And again, we've talked about that over and over again, that one of the principal things in investigations is identifying vulnerabilities and risk. And that's it, is that my prayers go out to them. They always have.
Oh, yeah, I'm sure they beat themselves up over it. But I think one thing I thought was, and not that it's okay to leave a 13 or 14-year-old, but it's not like they're sitting there watching a movie and they're 13 and 14 and you're just going to go eat real quick and you told them, do not open this door. You're talking about toddlers.
Yeah, and I think that I agree with you. I think that's where people got really kind of emotionally attached to that part is we're way away from what we'd call latchkey. We're away from small responsibilities. And, and having kids that are educated on what to do if these 4 things happen, fire, somebody stranger at the door, things like that, they're not capable of that.
No, I mean, they're still in diapers, for crying out loud.
Yeah, so... And I think that complicates things. I think that we could probably look at how anybody that saw the case saw the focus was first on an intruder, and then it leaned into the 2 parents.
Right.
And I'm not saying that they wouldn't have gotten examined anyway, but it's certainly, there we go, those kind of questions that make you go, And so I'm sure the people that were there, even when they're looking at an intruder situation, they probably, to be honest with you, they probably even looked at it as, did she get up and wander away? I mean, that's one thing you don't hear that's a probability at 3 is opening a door or going through a window and wandering away. And so maybe they got covered in the news and then didn't get covered in the news. Either way, I think that when they started looking at the parents and there was other things that came on that, is it maybe magnified the focus, zoomed in on them a little bit. Because again, I think rationally as parents and whatnot, we look at that and we're like, I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't do that.
Yeah. I mean, you certainly can't always put yourself in other people's shoes, but there's some things that just as a parent, you just don't do.
That's it.
And leaving your children unattended while you go enjoy a dinner is one of them. And again, why not utilize the babysitting service?
Yeah.
And if they were busy that night, then guess what? You don't go eat tapas tonight. You go tomorrow night when they are available.
Yeah, parenting 101 maybe. Again, I think we're on the edge of victim blaming without being there. So
I'm not trying to throw a stone at them, but
I'll defend that because it's a logical thing that people ask that we could all, at some point we can all collectively look at something and say that's beyond the pale. The mark's not met. Like I said, 3 years old and 18 months old for all of us is not going to happen.
That could have been prevented.
That's
all I'll say about that.
So, well, good deal. And again, that doesn't take away the pain and the loss
not at all.
And everything on it. But we have to look at it. And maybe a message in that is a reminder to people that these things that we hold as precious, we have to regard as precious, right? I mean, it's look at how many kids are left in hot cars.
Oh, God, that's a whole other topic that makes my blood boil.
And I unfortunately went to too many of those. So we'll kind of go on to your number 2.
Okay.
So we don't have a full-on parenting class.
Yes, thank you.
So good deal. What's your number 2?
Well, why the cadaver, you have to excuse me, I've made myself some notes here, so I want to reference.
Yeah.
So why did the cadaver dogs alert in both the apartment and the McCann's rental car? Mm-hmm. I don't know if you recall, but they had brought out cadaver dogs and they had alerted to both of those areas. And the alert suggested presence of blood and human remains. But then the follow-up tests were inconclusive, or at some point somebody said, well, they were kind of contaminated. Could be. I just thought, usually when you have these dogs and they're highly trained dogs, not that a dog can't make a mistake, but it hit on both that little flat they were staying in and then hit in the car.
There we go. Wow. We need to do an episode. We need to get a professional trained cadaver dog handler on the show.
Yes.
And I've thought about, again, that's one thing we like doing is we like bringing everybody specific skill sets that people bring. And that's the next one.
We actually know some through our dealings with Miss Sandra Hasty.
That's true.
We've met several cadaver handlers.
Yeah. So we need to do
handlers.
that. So here's what we got to, I think on there is that Nothing's absolute. I know that from just my naive impression of it and having your dog Becca and dogs I've had, we know that their sense of smell is tremendously larger than ours.
Oh my, yes.
And that we know that you can train dogs specifically to pick up on different things, and we get that. So in this case, I guess what you're looking at is, I guess the probabilities would be they contact that smell. Then I guess you got to ask, is that smell related to Madeleine? Is it can they distinguish between human and animal or other material that decomposes? That would be a question I would have. Like, now I know how they train. They actually use parts of people to when they train.
And I agree with that. But what I'm thinking is maybe it was something else. But what are the odds that it was two something else's in both places they had been?
We need to get a cadaver dog trainer. We need to get a handler because I don't know. Here's the thing. It shifted the focus back to them. Right. I mean,
yes.
That would, and okay, so that's reasonable to look at that and say, okay, we have to check this stuff out. I always look at those 10 million questions as to it's just critical thinking. When you get that information, what are the vulnerabilities in that information? What is the science in that information? And you always have to look at what the probabilities are of it being inaccurate and accept that as part of the decision what you do with that information. But for sure, I think the big thing here is it really narrowed that focus on them as suspects in the case. And in that in and of itself, like we've talked before, is not unreasonable. We don't want to believe that anybody would harm their children, but they do.
They do.
They do. And I think when we talked about Jean-Benet Ramsey, that was a thing that I think a stumbling point for a lot of people is that your beautiful, precious daughter that you love, but some things happen inside walls of people's homes that isn't right.
Yeah, everything sometimes looks great from the outside, but you don't know what happens inside.
And then there's accidents, and there's people get emotionally hijacked. There's so much. But I think that what that tells, because I saw the same thing, obviously, and we talked about it riding around, is I think we need to talk to some cadaver dog trainers and handlers.
Yes.
I really want to learn more about how they do it and what are specifically that they can do. I mean, I've even heard and read that some dogs can sense the smell of somebody in a tree that had roots in the area where somebody decomposed. I can't say that's impossible. I mean, because that olfactory system with them is off the hook, just off the hook. So I'm with you. It's like the thing is the probability of in two locations, independent locations, focused back on the same people.
Yes.
You're starting to get into some probabilities that are pretty weird. So I'd be interested too. So I guess what we got to do is we got to get us a cadaver dog handler. We
know a few that we can pull from.
Exactly. We've got to do that for sure. So that said, what's your number 3?
My third thing, there's been evidence that has been found with this guy named Christian Bruckner. I'm sure I'm not pronouncing it right, but there's been links to him to this case. And I've scribbled my notes as I've been studying this, so I'm going to reference it. So don't mind if I don't make eye contact.
Nobody testifies in court without looking at notes.
Thank
Always
you.
Remember that.
Well, I'm under my testifying mode right now. So what we know is that he was living nearby in 2007. And like I said, this happened in May of 2007, May 3rd. And he had a long history of sexual violence. His phone had pinged in that area during that time frame. He had at some point allegedly made statements about kidnapping a child, but there's no direct forensic link to that. But what they did find is that he had this factory, like an old abandoned factory. And I guess upon examination of that, they had found hard drives and USB sticks that had some pretty disturbing material and images on it. And that there was some writing suggested that he was involved in Madeleine's disappearance. Now, also even more disturbing was at this abandoned factory, there was a plethora of children's clothing, swimsuits, over 75 swimsuits of children's toys. All this was out there on this old abandoned factory. So, he's gotten brought into this as of, semi-recent, but he's currently serving a 7-year sentence for the rape of a 72-year-old woman. So I'm just appalled at all this evidence of this Christian guy. One of his friends had supposedly said he had made a quote, and of course it's not been verified, that she didn't scream. Supposedly he told the friend
he made
this,
a statement somewhere.
A statement, yeah. Now, like I said, I don't know that it's been verified or if there was proof of that, but it's just that all these years there was nothing, and now this guy's name's gotten brought into it.
If it's true, it's an incredible break.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And it shows that it may not happen fast, but it does. And it's fascinating. The circumstantial case against him is amazing. The statements to another party they're difficult.
Yeah,
right?
I mean, anybody could make statements if they're pissed at you.
That's it. And it's happened, right?
Yeah.
And everything. So it takes it up. But that the circumstantial part, swimsuits, children's clothing, children's toys, and you.
Who has that?
That's it, exactly, and why. And I guess I'm thinking investigatively what could be going on too is that they may be trying to identify this. They may be getting to try to identify when those particular swimsuits were manufactured and distributed, and what parts of the country they were distributed in, and were they limited? Were any special? And then maybe if you kept pulling that thread, do you start to compare those things to people or kids that are in the databases that went missing from beaches and pools? I'm really, this is that whole thing of just rolling out where you would go with that, because it's like, if it's circumstantial now, but you take things like that and you analyze them to see if there's any tangible, real physical evidence that can be construed from that. I'm just thinking the possibilities, but the amount of time are incredible on that, right? To do that.
Yes.
Because those third party statements, they're kind of hearsay till they're not, right? I do know that when I was reading too that there's been pressure applied to the German authorities to charge him before he gets out. And I understand that, because if he gets out, he's going to hit the road probably.
Oh, yeah, I'm sure.
But, what do we always talk about? At least in the United States. And other systems in other countries have nuances that are different. But, you can't do that till you have it. You can feel very strongly, but we've talked before, and it's so hard on family members that have survived these horrific things, is that whole thing of everybody knows, and maybe everybody does know, but, like Rob Wilson said when he talked about cold cases or pending cases, knowing it and proving it are two different things.
Oh, yeah, it's two vastly different things. And, one thing I wanted to add when we were talking about the children in the being in the little apartment, if you will, there had been mention of actually a detective on one of these documentaries on this years ago I watched. He had made reference that he felt like these children were sedated.
Oh, I remember
parents.
that. I remember that too, yeah.
And he's
talking about the babies and that.
Yeah, well, and who knows if she was, because she's gone, right?
Sure, yeah.
I mean, if you're going to sedate two, why not sedate the third? Because you want them all to sleep.
Yeah.
You don't want them to wake up if you're not there. So my guess, this is just only my guess, if you're going to sedate two, sedate three. So supposedly this detective that I'd watched, he said through all the commotion in this little apartment and the people coming in and out and doors closing and lifting stuff and flipping things over, he said these twins never woke up.
Yeah, there we go.
Never woke up. I'm going to tell you, I know some kids are heavy sleepers, but I'm going to tell you, working with 18-month-olds, them little things, sometimes they're good sleepers, but sometimes you make the slightest sound and you're, oh, dang, I was trying to be so quiet and I woke them up. But if you're moving chairs and tables and beds and people's talking and lots of voices are talking, he said those kids never woke up.
You know what? And that walks back to that first conversation on your number one, doesn't it?
Yeah, that's why I said I meant to reference that.
I guess the theory is did somebody do that to make that easier to leave them alone so they don't get up and wander off?
Well, yeah, because they're going to sleep. You don't want them to wake up, because what if supposedly they were doing checks every 30 minutes. So what happens if, you leave and 5 minutes later they wake up and you're not coming back for 25 minutes. Now there they are crying or trying to get out. I mean, but, also, I think she was a doctor of some sort. So the detective had kind of made reference to she had access to this sedation medicine, and he called it by name. It's nothing that I don't think we have here, or at least I haven't heard of it. I'm not a medical professional, but he made reference that she as a doctor would have access to this kind of sleep aid.
But here's how many times do we see in cases where people use things like Benadryl and antihistamines, and which I guess works, but in cases where they give too much,
yes,
are in really horrible cases.
And he even kind of hinted to that. What if she got too much and the parents did something with her because, oh my gosh, maybe we gave a fatal dose?
Yeah, we're back to that theory.
But but yes, you're right. Some people do give the Benadryl to get them to sleep through the night. Mm-hmm. And obviously we don't know, but it was kind of odd that detective did mention, or I think some investigator, they called him, he did mention the sedation medicine and how those twins didn't wake up. So then it makes you think, did Madeleine wake up? If you gave it to all three of them, maybe not, but someone back early on the case said, well, I saw a man carrying a sleeping child. Maybe if she's sedated, she is sleeping. Maybe she would never have waken up.
That would validate that statement.
Yes.
And the other two wouldn't wake up. Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, that would make it, again, another vulnerability in the whole situation.
And was he going to come back for the other two and just didn't, because then they came back in that time and she's gone?
I don't know if he was collecting
That's crazy.
kids.
Well, with 75 swimsuits and toys, I think he might have been.
Yeah.
Maybe.
True. And never know, maybe he had an age preference too.
So those are my three things.
Good deal. Good
what about
ones.
Yours?
Good ones. And those are the questions that everybody still questions to this day. I think that I know that the Portuguese police removed them as suspects, and a lot of people were confused about that. Mm-hmm. But keeping it, even if you don't remove as suspects, I think maybe that was, and of course the investigation got picked up internationally by other people, but it's a good reminder to look in other places. Don't just overfocus.
Right.
Oh, don't ever overfocus. So mine are kind of common themes that we've seen before. One that the question people still ask, kind of like they asked about your number one, is the failure to secure that crime scene properly in the beginning, much like JonBenet Ramsey, much like other cases.
So many people went in and out of there.
Exactly. And I guess where that hit me from somebody that not only did it, but then as a leader in the organization, making sure these things are done is, in the beginning on these cases, they're like in JonBenet, if you believe that it's an abduction or a runaway, you're basing it on what you've got in the information, and so you may not put all those pieces together to go to that next alert level to secure it. But a fundamental thing in the business is everything is a crime scene till it's not. And I guess without preaching or anything like that, it's another reminder to people that are on the job is to lock that down. It can be hard. If you have an emotionally distraught family and other families coming over, think about what that's like for a minute.
Oh, yeah.
Is what you're doing is you're evacuating that home. You should be having everybody out and actually transported. This is transported down to headquarters in separate cars and stuff like that. And then when the other family and friends start showing up, they can't come in. And that's rough on.
Oh, sure.
But again, it's like the sanctity of that environment. And later it can get bigger or smaller based on information, but holding on to it, I think it's just another example, because the problem is do we, the trace evidence theory, we take things into a crime scene and we take things out. Are things manipulated? Mm-hmm. That's how you can wind up with material in a scene that just confuses everything, extra fingerprints and stuff that we have to run down. And if you can't run them down and we charge somebody, then the defense comes up and says, well, what about this thumbprint right here? And it might have been Aunt Nana that stopped by with some bread pudding to make everybody feel better. I mean, it can be any of those. But back to it, I guess, of Response 101 is you lock that scene down.
Right.
A lot of what you do in this business, in hindsight, will be unnecessary, but you do it because of the probability. I remember in the cases that me and the people I worked with is that when you went to the autopsy, you almost always requested a sexual assault examination kit. And I remember one of the medical examiners one time, well, why are you doing that? We don't have any. I'm like, well, we don't know when they're going to go away in a little bit.
Right.
And you always ask them for fingernail scrapings. Even if your case doesn't look like that, a lot of times you always ask for gunshot residue testing, even if you didn't have a gun around, with the idea being that I got one shot, we've got one shot, and you recover it.
Yes.
Same thing with the scene. And that's hard because cops go into so many death scenes that aren't criminal and they're not suspicious. And they're sad and they're tragic, but something about that, you have to stop that in the beginning. Again, you can always open it back up, Make it bigger or make it smaller. So that was my number one.
All right.
The number two is one that comes back to what you were talking about on taking kids out of somewhere. Could it be part of a child trafficking operation?
Oh, yeah.
Possibly. Even with this identified person now, we don't know yet. We do know a lot of those very evil pedophile people like to share stuff. They like to share experiences, pictures, and victims.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's a bigger problem, I think, than people know.
Yeah.
I remember Ray, the DA, rest in peace. Ray, up until, I remember we lost him, but, Ray always talked about that. Even in retirement, we would be talking and he would say, we've got to get some awareness out on this human trafficking thing. And it's real, it's real.
Yeah, it is. And I think, we know of a person, you and I were talking this morning about bringing him on because
I'm gonna see
he
if he'll
does
do it.
that.
Yeah, he trains that. He's not a human trafficker.
No, he doesn't human traffic. Let me rephrase.
Or
he
child
does not
traffic.
Traffic any people.
Yeah.
He trains on that.
Yeah.
But when you and I travel, I always notice when in the restrooms, and I don't know if it's in the men's, because, men's can be trafficked too.
Yeah.
Men can be trafficked too. There's always the sign up that says, if you're a victim, call this number.
Huge.
Huge.
And if you look at the Super Bowl, the Kentucky Derby, the big events, the Indy 500, if you watch and pay attention to most law enforcement, local and federally, they send more people in because those big events draw a lot of attention to adult and child trafficking.
Yes.
Like it's like because of the immense amount of population, the people that may have that interest are probably going to be there, and the traffickers come. So because you can have adult and you can have child trafficking. Child trafficking is the one is the nightmare of the boogeyman that comes and takes the child and sells or trades that child off.
Yes.
And the child's left with a life of abuse. How horrible. So in this case, I think that'll be something that we'll watch for. That if they work more on this Bruckner guy, he's probably not going to say anything. But if for some reason they get something out of him, or maybe some of that digital evidence, or maybe some of that clothing evidence, if they keep – the cool thing is once you start getting those threads, like Rob Wilson said, you can pull the sweater.
Yes.
You just got to get the first one. So it'll be interesting to see. And I'm betting big money that multinationally there's a lot of effort going into while he's in prison for that assault on that 72-year-old woman, that there's a lot of effort going on. It's kind of exciting to think about what it would be like to working on that team because of the places they'll probably go. So that's my number two. My last one is a common thing that we've talked about a little bit before, so I want to emphasize it again. And that's in the beginning, how did the press shape our opinions of the McCanns? And we've kind of touched on that a little.
Yeah. I mean, I guess you're open to whatever you feel, but I think the way it made an impression on me was that it was the parents were guilty. I'm telling the truth. That's just what it was.
So, and again, I think it's a very recent conversation that's picked up momentum in the past several years. And I'm not damning the media. We got to be careful because I've got so many friends that have worked in journalism that are absolutely professional and worked close to them and everything.
But it could just be a matter of perception of what you perceive it to be. But are they altering it? Are they persuading how you're thinking?
Well, it's how much they give, right? And how much they lean in. And then the problem with it is we saw this in John Benet Ramsey. You take the tabloid industry, which is not exactly known for being the gospel truth. There's nobody's laying their hands on Bibles in the tabloid industry. And I'm pretty sure that they'll tell you their business model is to sell tabloids.
Right.
So, they have to approach a certain group of people that will believe anything and pick that up. So ethically right there, I'm not saying it's right, but that they'll tell you that's why we're in the business and they're going to exploit the shit out of stuff when they can. But at some point, is there an ethical obligation to put a cruise control on it to limit it? Because here's what goes wrong. You said it best, what we get. There's a thing called sampling bias that we can all suffer from. And what that is we get enough of these representative things in a certain direction, and that can turn us to get a strong opinion that way. And if we're not real careful, we can get confirming evidence bias from that. I think, and I don't know how you fix it. But I think that we're dying of that right now, because you look at some of the sensational cases right here in 2025. The Karen Reed trial over the Boston police officer in the Boston area is people are nearly ready to go to blows over that, and that's not even out of a trial yet. And there's a lot to that. Mm-hmm. It's I'll be honest with you. I think that some of the defense attorneys has started to try that in the public eye, and I don't think that's ethical, but they are. But back to it again, a reminder that we have to keep critical thinking skills. We're being fed this information.
Right.
And now with social media and algorithms, is if you click on it, we know that within fractions of a second, there's an algorithm that shifts and says, Wendy, hit this. So it goes out, and that's what you can see on your feed.
Yes.
I think that the sad part is that, again, if JonBenet Ramsey's parents and her brother had nothing to do with her death, which, again, I have a hard time walking away from that, but we'll leave that out, then that would be unfair. And in this case, is in retrospect, it's always 2020, but if this Bruckner guy took their daughter and did something with her, in the media shaped a narrative against them, that's just not right.
No, because
that's not right. Any one of us could be on the end of that stick.
And it's, and to think about how they're going about their day-to-day lives with something as simple as going to the supermarket. If people are making allegations or shouting things at them because they think they're...
There we go.
I mean, that would be a tough life to live.
I tell you what, take that now. Listen, how far back that was. Take that now with the just explosion in social media and apps and transmission capability and everything. And let's just be honest with you. We've got too many people in the world that are just cruel. Yes. They're just cruel. They exploit people's pain. I'm not going to go on and on about it, but it's a sad place to be in. I guess what I'm getting back to my point on my number 3 that struck me is, one more time, maybe down the road we do some analysis of what the media role plays on this, because if we convict somebody and they're a horrible monster, I don't have a problem.
Right.
Put them on the side of a building, throw things at them. I mean, not them, but their picture. But man, until that happens, we're not based on that. We're not based on informally indicted, and we're careful here. We tell our guests that we're not naming people. We'll talk about the periphery. Mm-hmm. We'll talk about the environment where, if that's true, it'll bubble up if somebody comes forward. But I think the press did shape our opinion of man, and it shaped us on a lot of other things too. A lot of others. So that's my 3. I think your 3 were wonderful, as always.
Thank you. I liked yours really as well.
I think it's a neat thing to break these down. And again, I'm learning too. So
and also some people may have never heard about this. This was 18 years ago.
Right.
So some of your younger crime fans might not have heard from something 18 years ago. They might have been kids back then.
Well, that's it. And again, we've never covered it. We really won't cover them. This is our way to talk about these. Yeah. Is man, if you're curious, just Googles it. I mean, go, because it's been covered by other documentaries and other professional podcasts. Better not even want to take a run at it. And so there's no reason to reinvent the wheel. But it's kind of neat to throw a pitch. So
I've got another one up my sleeve, and we'll talk about that tonight over dinner. But
sounds good.
I like doing these as well because it does, especially if this guy ends up getting convicted of it. Rightfully so, he should be. But I just like to, like you, find cases and that have been out there and re-scratch the surface and exactly pick them apart.
And there's still a hunt for justice for her. So again, if you're watching and listening to this, just jump into the comment section and let us know what you think. Because I'm an open book on it. And again, this is it. If we're off base, tell us we're off base. I'd like to hear it. And if you've got other information that sways that information, do that. And let's all hope that one day that this little girl and her family does get justice, and that if it comes the right way. So until the next time, that's my 3 things and Wendy's 3 things.
And my 3 things. And again, these are only our opinions.
Yeah,
everyone else may have different opinions. It's just my own opinion.
Share them. Good deal.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good night. The Murder Police podcast is hosted by Wendy and David Lyons and was created to honor the lives of crime victims, so their names are never forgotten. It is produced, recorded, and edited by David Lyons. The Murder Police podcast can be found on your favorite Apple or Android podcast platform as well as at murderpolicepodcast.com, where you will find show notes, transcripts, information about our presenters, and a link to the official Murder Police Podcast merch store, where you can purchase a huge variety of Murder Police Podcast swag. We are also on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube, which is closed caption for those that are hearing impaired. Just search for the Murder Police Podcast and you will find us. If you have enjoyed this podcast, please subscribe for more and give us 5 stars and a written review on Apple Podcasts or wherever you download your podcasts. Make sure you set your player to automatically download new episodes so you get the new ones as soon as they drop. And please tell your friends. Lock it down, Judy.